Welcome back everyone. In this lesson, we are going to be working on setting up our player game object. This is going to be the object which is going to act as our player. We'll be moving it throughout our level and it will be able to interact with various different things. So first of all, in our scene view here, let's go down to our sprites folder and I'm going to drag in our player sprite right here. Okay, drag that into the hierarchy and it has been created here in our scene. Now, we're not going to be actually having our sprite as the main parent object. Instead, we're going to be using an empty game object as the parent. So here in the hierarchy, I'm going to right click, create empty. I'm going to call this one player. And I'm going to set the position to be 0, 0, 0. So it is nice and centered in the middle of the screen here. We can then select our player sprite. I'm going to rename this to be sprite. And I'm going to drag that in as a child of player, making sure that the position is at 0, 0, 0 as well. Now on our player sprite here, let's also change the sorting layer from default over to objects, since we do want this to be rendered on top of the ground sprites. And on our player main object now, what we can do is start attaching all of our components that we need. So first of all, we need a player script, and this is going to manage moving the player and interacting with various different things. So over in our scripts folder, what I'm going to do is right click and create a brand new C# script called player. We can then go to our player object and attach that script as a component. Okay, so wait for that script to compile, select our player and drag that player script on. There we go. Next, we want to add in a collider. And we'll go add component, and for our character here, let's add in a box collider 2D. Now by default, it's going to be a bit larger than the actual sprite because the sprite bounds do have quite a bit of padding on the side. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring the size on the X down to probably around, let's just say 0.5, and we could also maybe go 0.5 on the Y as well, because really we are only going to be detecting hits and all that with the coins, with the flag, with the cars when the player is on the tile where it's going to be hit pretty much. So the collider doesn't really matter too much. I just recommend making it a bit smaller than the actual sprite to allow for some leeway. And in order for us to be able to actually detect collisions, one of the objects that are colliding or triggering need to have a rigid body component, need to have that physics component attached. So we're going to go add component and we're going to go rigid body 2D. And while we're at it, let's also make our box collide 2D a trigger so that we can actually go through things and not bounce off objects. And down in our rigid body 2D, we don't want to give the player any sort of mass or any sort of velocity or gravity. We want our player to pretty much be how it is right now, but with a rigid body 2D component. And what we can do with that is go up to where it says body type and change that from dynamic to kinematic. And kinematic basically means that it's got the rigid body 2D attached, we have access to the properties, but it's not going to be affected by physics. Objects can't push our player, gravity is not going to be affecting it, so we have total control over where it goes and how it interacts with everything. So those are the components that we are going to be attaching to our player. Finally, let's go ahead up in the inspector here and change the tag of the player over to player here. You should have a player tag by default, and this is going to be used for the coin, the car, the end goal to detect when they are hitting the player. Okay, so they know that the object they're colliding with is the player. Okay, we can save that. Now let's go over to our prefabs folder and just drag that play in as a prefab so we can use it in future levels. And that is it. If we look in the game view now, you can see we have our player on screen, and of course, when we are actually creating our game in the future lessons, we're going to be having a sort of portrait mode aspect ratio, because this game is going to be targeted towards mobile phones and you're going to be playing it with your phone upright. So right now the resolution, or not the resolution, but the aspect ratio is 16:9, meaning that it is your default monitor size. So we're going to be resizing that later on with the device simulator. And in fact, we're going to be working on the device simulator in the next lesson so we can actually get those mobile aspect ratios set up and ready to go. So, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all in the next lesson. Welcome back everyone. In this lesson, we are going to begin setting up the ability for our game to detect touches, thus moving the player forwards, left, or right. Okay, so Let's begin by going to the scripts folder and creating a brand new C# script here, and this one is going to be called swipe detection. Okay, we can go ahead and create a new game object here in the hierarchy. We're going to create an empty object, and this one is going to be called underscore game manager. Okay, this is just where I like to store all my scripts, on a game manager object here, such as swipe detection, if you have any sort of overall management scripts. And what we're going to do then is we're just going to double click on this script to open it up inside of Visual Studio. Okay, and here we are. So first of all, what I'm going to do is just delete the start and update functions, since we can add those in later on when we need them. And inside of this script, what we are going to be doing is detecting when we have put our finger down on the screen. And once that happens, we are going to check to see if we have swiped the finger left, right, or up. If we have swiped it up, we're going to move forward. If we swipe it left, we're going to move left. And if we swipe it right, we're going to move right. Okay. And this is going to basically allow you to select anywhere on the screen to swipe. Okay. You don't have to go in the center of the screen and swipe left or right. You can go to the bottom left of the screen and swipe right, and it's going to move you right. So what we're going to do first of all is create a few variables. First of all, we're going to create a public player variable here. So make sure it is of type class player, which is the name of the script that we created a few lessons ago. And this is going to basically store our player so that we can later on tell it to move once we have detected a certain swipe. Next, we need to create a private vector2, and this is going to be for the start pause. Okay, and by start position, this basically means where is your finger touched down on the screen for the first time. Okay, and then from there we'll check to see if it's left, up, or right. Then we need to create another public variable, public float. Actually, we'll make say public integer, and this is going to basically be how many pixels do we have to swipe in order for this to be detected. So this is going to be called pixel dist to detect, and by default let's make this equal to around we'll make it 20. Okay, so you don't have to swipe far, you only have to move your finger a little bit in a certain direction in order to have it detected. And one more variable we need to create is going to be a private boolean, and this is going to basically be true or false for if we have our finger down. Okay, so I'm going to call this one finger down. And if we have touched our finger down, that's going to be set to true. So once that is true, we can then detect if we're swiping left, right, or up. Okay, so now what we need to do is create the update function. So void update. And inside here, we want to first of all check to see if we have pressed our finger down. So what we want to do is go if the finger down equals false. So if our finger's currently not down, and input.touchCount is greater than 0. So do we now have a finger on the screen? And is that finger which is touching the screen, is that the first frame that it is down on the screen? So for this we can go input, whoops, not that big line of text. We just want to go and input.touches, and touches is an array, so we want to get the first touch out of that array, dot phase equals touch phase dot began. Okay, so this is quite a big if statement. We have 3 different conditions. First of all, we're checking to see if finger down is equal to false. Then we're checking to see if we have more than 0 touches on the screen. And then we're checking to see if the first touch on the screen, if this is the first frame it is down. And if so, we are going to go start pause equals input dot touches 0 dot position. Okay, so the position on the screen where we are touching down. And then we also want to go finger down equals true. And there we go. That's how we detect basically if our finger's down for the first time. We set finger down to true, and we set the start position to be where we put our finger down. So let's save that, go down to the next line here, and the rest of this code is going to be if our finger is down on the screen. So if finger down in this big if statement right here, we then want to see first of all, have we swiped upwards? Have we swiped our finger up? And to check that, we can go if the input.touches 0 dot position dot y, if this y position is greater than or equals to our start pos dot y plus the pixel distance to detect, then this is going to register as a swipe up. So what we can do here is go finger down equals false, and then go debug.log, and this is going to be swipe up. Okay, so we have detected a swipe up. And as a matter of fact, we should be able to test this out inside of the editor, because right now we are checking for touch inputs. And since we are making this on a computer, we need a way of actually testing this out with our mouse. And what we're going to do is at the bottom here, at the bottom of the if statement, the update function, I'm going to go // and this is going to be for testing, okay? And in here, we're going to go if finger down equals false. So basically we're doing the same code we have right here. And as a bit of a challenge, I want you to go ahead and see if you can sort of duplicate this code we have right here, but use it in terms of the mouse, okay? You might need to look up some stuff online if you're not too sure on certain things on how to get the mouse position, but I want you to have a go at this, and then we'll be right back to see how you're done. Okay, welcome back. I hope you had a go at that. So let's have a look at how we can do this. So for detecting, first of all, if our finger or our mouse is down, we want to go if finger down equals false and the input.getMouse button down 0. So this is going to be true on the frame that the left mouse button is down. And then if our finger is down, we just want to see if the input.mousePosition.y is greater than or equals to startPos.y plus the pixel distance to detect. Okay, so we're just using input.getMouse button down and input.mousePosition for the different values. Okay, so we can save this, return to the Unity editor, and let's go to our game manager object right here. We don't have to give it a player, so let's just go ahead and press play, and let's try and swipe upwards. Okay, so it done that by default, don't know why, but if we click and drag, swipe up, if I swipe left, now you'll see you might get a lot of errors like this, and the reason why is because there is some problems when it comes to actually checking to see if the finger is down. Maybe if you don't move it in the correct position or you move it in a different direction, it doesn't calculate things certain right. What we need to do is make it so that if our finger is all of a sudden up, or if our mouse button is up and off the screen, set finger down to false and reset the start position. So here we are going to create a new if statement called if finger down and input.getMouse button up 0 for the left mouse button. Then what we want to do is just go, what we want to do is just set finger down equals false. Okay, that's what we want to do there. So if we go back to the editor and press play again, you should see that these errors are no longer appearing. So if we swipe up, there we go, swipe down, nothing happens. We can swipe left, nothing happens. Swipe right, nothing happens. Sometimes you may get a swipe up if you swipe right, so what we can do in that sense is change the pixels distance to detect. Let's change this to maybe 50, and now if we swipe up, we have to swipe up a bit further in order for it to detect, but if we swipe left and right, you should see that you're not really getting any swipe ups unless it's on a bit of an angle, okay? So we've got swiping up. I'm going to keep our pixel distance to detect at 50 here, and let's also add in this little bit of code for the finger down in terms of touch. So here we're just going to go if finger down and input dot touch count is greater than 0 and input dot touches, the first touch, so touches array with 0 here for the first one, dot phase equals touch phase dot ended. Okay, so when the finger is released from the screen, here what we want to do is just go like before, finger down equals false. And remember that we are creating two sets of code here, one for touch inputs on a mobile device and one for using the mouse for testing it out here inside of Unity. Okay, so we've got swiping up done. Now in the next lesson, we are going to be working on getting swiping left and swiping right, as well as having our player actually move around when they have been swiped. So I'll see you all then in the next lesson. Welcome back everyone. In this lesson, we are going to be continuing on with our swipe detection script right here, detecting when we have pressed our mouse or finger down on the screen and swiped up, left, or right. So in this lesson, we are going to be adding in left and right swipe detections. So to do this, we can go down to where we are checking to see if our finger is down, and here is where we detect if we are touching and swiping upwards. Now to detect left, we can just go here, else if, and then we can go input.touches, not touch count, touch is 0.position.x is less than or equals to startPos.y minus the pixel dist to detect. Okay, and if this is the case, we can go finger down equals false, and then go debug.log, and in here we want to go swipe left. And for swiping right, we can go else if input.touches 0 .pos.x is greater than or equals to startpos.y, .x actually, and in fact let's go here and change this startpos.y to startpos.x, since we do want to go along the horizontal axis, not the vertical, for left and right. Back here we can go, so if our touch position.x is greater than or equal to startpos.x plus the pixel distance to detect, then we want to go finger down equals false, and then not finger down, so finger down equals false, and debug.log swipe right. Okay, so that is how we can set it up for touch input. Now, as a bit of a challenge, go ahead and go down here where we have our input for our mouse and set it up for that. Okay, go ahead and I'll be right back to see how you're done. Okay, I hope you had a go at that. Pretty much it is the exact same as we done previously, where all we had to do was change originally where it says input.touches0.position to be input.mousePosition whatever, in order to get the position of the mouse rather than the position of the touch. So we can save that, return to the Unity editor, and if we press play, in fact, let's clear this first, press play, you should see that we can swipe up in order to get the swipe up detections. We can swipe left, we can swipe right, and there we go. So we left, right, up, and nothing for down, but we'll get a right for down since we are going on a bit of an angle. So there you go. We can swipe up to move forward, swipe left to move right, or swipe left to move left, and swipe right to move right. Now, how do we actually set it up so our player moves in that way? Well, what we can do is open up our player script by double clicking on it. I'm going to remove the start and update functions here. And what we're going to do first of all is create some variables. So first of all, let's get a public float move speed. Now move speed is going to define how long it takes to get from one tile to the other. So if we swipe left, it moves left one tile, and how fast is it going to get from that tile to the left one. Then we need a private vector3 for the target position. So target pos is basically going to be where is this player trying to get to. And inside of the start function, we can just set the target pos to be whatever our existing position is right now, since we don't want the player moving anywhere at the start. And then what we want to do is create a new function called public void move. Okay, and inside of the move function here, it is going to carry over a parameter of a vector3 called move direction. Okay, and this is just going to be either up, left, or right. And inside of here, what we want to do is basically just go target pos plus equals move direction. Okay, and that's all we want to do for this. And we've set our target position, but how do we actually move towards our target position? Well, over inside of the update function, we can go ahead and create that now. So we can just go void update, and inside of here, we just want to, over time, move towards our target position. So here we'll go transform.position equals vector3.move towards. Our current position is going to be transform.position, and our target is going to be the target position. And we want to move at a move rate of move speed multiplied by time.delta time. We are multiplying by time.delta time in order to convert it from whatever our move speed is per frame to per second. So if you do have varying frame rates, you'll still be moving at the same speed. Okay, so back over in our swipe detection script now, what we can do is go up to where we are debug logging all of these swipe up, swipe left, and swipe right. I'm going to delete the swipe up here, and I'm going to replace this with player.move, and inside here we need to give it a move direction. So I'm going to go vector3.up, and vector3.up is just a vector that is 0 on the x, 1 on the y, and 0 on the z. Okay, so it's just 1 on the y up. For swipe left, we can just go player.move, and then give that a vector3.left to swipe left, in order to move left, And then for right, we can go player.move and give that one there a vector3.right. Okay, and we want to go down here and do the exact same for our mouse detection. And there we go. Okay, so now what we can do is save that and return to the Unity editor. And all we need to do here is select our player. We need to go to where our move speed is and change this to something. So what do we want to set this to? Well, we want to move tiles pretty fast, so I'm going to set this to maybe something around 5. We can then select our game manager and drag our player in to the player property here, so it is now linked to the player. Press play, and let's just see how it goes. So we can swipe up. There we go. Player moves up. Swipe left. Player moves left. Swipe right. Player moves right. And we can keep swiping up, left, right as much as we wish. But as you can see, the camera is not following the player. So in the next lesson, we are going to work on it so that our camera can actually follow our player. And we'll make it as well so that our player cannot go off screen. Because watch this, I can go right again and I can keep swiping right. And if you look at our player game object, look at the X position, you'll see that our player keeps on moving to the right. We don't want that. We want the player to only be able to move within a certain bounds on the left and right axes, okay? So, in the next lesson, we'll set up our camera and we'll set up clamping our player position. So, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all in the next lesson.